Hello there. Welcome to another episode of the Terry and Frank Show. We're so glad you've been following this series on the human factors of leadership. Hi, I'm Frank Wander. I'm the founder of People Productive. We help companies and the people that work for them to thrive together by using the time, talent, and energy of their folks as best as possible. Tara?
Hello, I'm Terry Mays. I'm a certified culture engineer with emphasis on helping companies bring out the best in their people.
So today we have another episode for you. And we're going to go in, take a look at the amygdala, why this matters, why you should know about it. We'll talk about the impact of amygdala events and hijackings, what they mean to the productivity of your workforce, and what you as a leader should understand here, and what you as a leader should be doing to make sure that these things are not happening in your workplace. So, Tara, I'm going to share. Let's get right here. Okay. A family in harmony will prosper in everything. Now, we're starting with this because you have a work family. And if you want the work family to prosper in everything, we're going to show you the science behind that, at least part of it. And I think this is very important, don't you, Tara?
I do, because you spend a lot of time with people at work. You're there 8 or more hours, sometimes 10, 12 hours. It just depends on how the projects are going. But you spend a lot of
Mhm.
time with people. And so you want people to feel like they're part of the family, and they do. You just instantly start to develop those relationships that make people feel like they're part of your very own family.
So we should look at one thing that would make them not prosper. So I'm going to jump over again. So let's talk about this. Humans are wired for survival. They have a threat sensor. This little almond-shaped gland here on the hippocampus is called the amygdala. The amygdala is your threat sensor. And the threat sensor is very important because you as a worker are looking for threats in your environment, no different than one of our ancient relatives who was out hunting on the African savannah, keeping their eye out for threats, always searching for something that might hurt them. Tara, so what do you think about this?
Yes, this is so important. And really, guys, we can't stress this enough. This fight, flight, I can't say it, this fight or flight
Yeah.
response that you get from the amygdala takes over completely. So your brain is a sophisticated computer, and it is
Mhm.
processing sensing everything around you to determine, am I in danger? Because our ancestors had to do that with in the wild with animals and everything
Mhm.
coming at them. So they were automatically on high alert all the time. And so the brain has a way of being on alert to say, am I in danger? And once the brain senses that you are in danger, then hormones start to kick up to help you, the
Mhm.
adrenaline pumping. Your body knows how to respond to danger. But what happens is your rational brain is no longer in control. Your rational brain is kind of taking a back seat to what your body knows how to do all by itself. So it's crucial, especially in the workplace. If a person feels threatened, regardless of if you were trying to threaten them or not, if they feel that threat, their body is going to automatically put them in this limbic system response where they feel
Mhm.
like I have to fight for myself, or I'm trying to get out of this situation as quickly as possible. Either they're going to fight it out or they're going to run away from it. Either way, they're going to focus on escape and however they can escape the best way
Yeah.
possible.
And of
So you
course, in the workplace, that
don't
can take on many, many different forms, right? So,
Yes.
Terry, I think you nailed it because I'm going to go share the next slide here.
Yes, maybe I got a little ahead of myself.
No, you did great. So here it is. This is from Daniel Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence. I think you should read this book. If you have never read it and you're a leader, this is where it all begins. It was where my journey started, although I was a bio major. This is what got me back into the human side of leadership to really understand and put together the things I had learned in a way that I could understand what was productive, what wasn't, and how to shape the environment in a way to create an environment where people were able to give their best. So when the amygdala sounds an alarm, it sends urgent messages to every major part of the brain. It triggers a secretion of flight or fright hormones, as Terri said, sets the brain on edge, speeds the heart rate, raises blood pressure, slows breathing, and rivets attention on the source of the fear and prepares the muscles to react accordingly. The mind and the body have been hijacked. So this is really important because, if you have limbic events going on at the office, maybe not this severe, people's brains are being hijacked. And we're going to get into, what that means, because when the body's put on high alert, these neurotransmitters are released in the brain and they go into the bloodstream. They linger, they're reabsorbed slowly. The more frequently they're released, the longer the effect. And this is why people become stressed out ultimately. And individuals who are stressed out are continuously ready for flight or fright or freeze, actually, and not for creative work. So the body stays in a state of arousal if they're in a dangerous environment. And we're going to talk a little bit about the dangers that occur in the workplace. It's not a tiger jumping out to eat you, but there are other dangers that are threats to your own survival, because your work is your lifeline. You pay for your food, your rent, everything. It has a huge impact. You build a lot of relationships. Any threat to that is going to be very limbic in nature. There's no question.
Right.
So this
Absolutely.
stuff really matters, really matters.
Right. You mentioned something earlier about people giving their best at work. And that's a very key point in
Mhm,
this space of making sure that people don't feel attacked or threatened.
mhm.
It's important so that they are able to give their best. You can't demand it out of people, you can't force them. They have to willingly bring their best to you. And so, as an employer, you want to make sure that you're creating an environment where people feel comfortable enough and they trust their leadership. They know that their leaders have their back, that they're going to fight for them, that they're going to take care of them, that they care
Mhm.
about them as an individual, because that those are the things that make people more comfortable with bringing their whole self to work. And when you bring your whole self, you're able to be much more productive, much more interactive with your coworkers. It's a much better experience, a better human experience at work. So it's critical that people are able to bring their whole selves to work, because it makes such a big difference in their productivity. So that's why this is important. If you've got
Yes.
an environment where people don't feel safe, they don't feel physically safe or emotionally safe or psychologically safe, if they don't feel that safety at work, then that's going to keep them in this stress state where they're not very productive.
Mhm. There's no question about it. The whole, notion of psychological safety, which used to be called emotional safety, is really very, very important. Um, and there are all sorts of triggers. You want people to be accepted. You want them to bring their whole self to work. And then when they get there, you don't want an event that starts shutting parts of them down.
Right.
So they've got to be able to actually fully engage. This is where relaxation comes in, think time, getting into a state of flow, interruption-free time. All these things matter, because if you've taken the time to make sure they bring their whole self to work, then let that blossom and flourish in the office, right?
Right. You don't want them fighting fights that they don't have to fight. So you want them focused on things that are important. So the things that are at work, you've got a lot of planning and analysis, strategy, all kinds of things that need to happen. And you don't need them focused on, should I escape from this situation because my coworkers or my manager are yelling, or somebody is mistreating another person, any of the things that would be happening that will cause them to start to shut down. As a manager, you own that culture, you own the environment, so you have to really pay attention to how people are responding, and if they feel like they're being threatened, and especially if someone comes to you and says that they're being threatened or they
Mhm.
feel threatened by a situation, take that seriously and really do something about it, because that person is in a stressful state and that is not a healthy place to be for
Yes.
8 or more hours a day. The body just cannot sustain that level of stress on a
Yes, the
day.
whole notion of stressed out, where those neurotransmitters are lingering in the blood because you're going from limbic event to limbic event. And I think this is really, really important. What are these things that are threats in the workplace? Why don't we take a look at those, Terry? And let me share again, because you're on the money. It is these threats in the workplace, and people may not be thinking, about threats and all the different forms of threats, large and small, that can occur in a workplace. So since 90% of the wiring in the limbic system is for fear, which is survival, you've got to eliminate workplace behaviors that set this stress sensor off. So here's some examples. Blame. Running a blame-oriented environment. When you blame somebody, it's a threat to their survival, actually, right? Because now they've done wrong. It wasn't a learning moment where they could have grown and learned something out of it. Blame says you did bad, you're a bad person. And that is a threat to their survival. Betrayal, when you're working with teams of people and you betray someone, could be big or small, that's a threat. Hidden agendas, deceit, fear, untrustworthiness, punishment, embarrassment, embarrassing people, horrible. I've seen that so many times over the years. I think there's a lot less of it now, right, Tara?
Yeah, that is a pretty hefty list of
Yeah.
what not to do in the workplace.
Oh,
If
wait, but there's more.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is all behavior that is not acceptable in the workplace, and it's actually counterproductive. So
Oh,
if you're
gosh.
trying to create an environment where people feel like they belong, where they can bring their whole self to work and be the most productive self, this list is just a list of the absolute worst things that you can do. So if you're
Toxic.
badgering people and making them feel unsafe at work, embarrassed,
Ostracism,
exactly, leaving people,
intimidation, threats. There's all
yelling.
sorts of levels of threats too, right?
Yes, yes. All of this makes such a big difference in your emotional state. And your
Mhm.
emotional state matters because your creativity is limited when you're in this high stress state. And in this digital transformation age that we're in, you need all of the brain power you can get because
Oh
every
boy,
going through so much
so
transformation.
on the money.
So many things are changing, and you need all of your brain power to focus on that change and not stressful events that can be avoided, that are unnecessary in a lot of ways. Now, that's not to say that sometimes there are things that come up in the workplace and it's stressful and people have to deal with it. That's not to avoid those things. But there are other times where we create stress that doesn't have to be stress. We
Mhm.
don't have to have embarrassing moments where we just purposely try to embarrass a coworker or an employee or blame them publicly just to shame them or make them feel bad. Those are
Mhm.
just bad traits, really bad traits for a leader.
Really bad. I mean, terrible stuff that goes on. I've seen all of it happen at one time or another. And right away, if you're working in an environment where people have to think and solve problems for a living, you can see how the equipment is turned off. I noticed that when I went in to do these
Right.
turnarounds, replace these toxic leaders, and people were afraid. They weren't willing to form connections with one another, which meant there was no collaboration. No collaboration. There's no team creativity. There's lots of defects. I used to say that every solution that was delivered was a reflection of the social system that created it. If that social system was broken, boom, defects, lots of things disconnected, poorly built stuff.
Yes.
Absolutely, without a doubt, that is how these large technology projects come off in the digital era. Every company is becoming a technology company. You got to get this right. There's just no question. You got to
Right.
nail this. You got to know how to run the human infrastructure. Come on, what are you waiting for? Jesus.
That is so true. It's such a higher rate of problems,
Mhm.
defects, recurring issues. All those things are just signals that there's something wrong with the work environment. When
Yes.
people feel high stress, like they have to complete too many tasks in a short period of time, you
Mhm.
are creating a bad environment for your people, and they won't or may not be able to leave the environment. So the result is you'll see the quality go down because they can't do it all. And they may be saying something and they may not, it
And
may
they may
just
not. So $1 million question is, how well is the human infrastructure in your place operating? This is obviously, level 1, level 2 of Maslow. Things are really, really broken. Let's take a look at some of the physiological manifestations of an environment where the threat sensors are going off. Cognitive symptoms, people are getting stressed out, inability to remember things, difficulty concentrating, impaired judgment, on the lookout for negatives. That is what the limbic system is doing. It's looking for every threat. It's parsing every word, trying to see if there's a threat in it. So it's constantly working and it's on high alert, anxious, erasing thoughts, constant worrying. This is what happens in a bad environment. And you can see it. The equipment isn't working on work. It's working on survival.
Right.
No question.
Right. Impaired judgment is one that really just stands out for me.
Mhm.
You are not making the best decisions when you're in this state because, again, your rational mind, your thinking mind, where you would logically step through some rational thoughts to come to a conclusion, you're not doing that. Your
Mhm.
judgment is absolutely impaired because you are trying to survive. You are fighting for your life. So you're not making any of the right decisions with the right set of information. It's all about how can I escape? So that
Yes.
constant worrying, that stress that comes with worry and having those anxious and racing thoughts all the time, that is not a healthy place for a person to live. And it comes out in behaviors, but it also comes out in the physical body. So the body cannot maintain itself in this state where you're constantly worrying. That worrying is putting a lot of pressure and stress on your heart.
Well,
And
let's take a look at we have the mind, and then we have what's going on, in terms of your emotion,
yeah,
your whole body. Look, moodiness, irritability, agitation or inability to relax, feeling overwhelmed, sense of loneliness and isolation because you're cutting yourself off from everybody else because you can't trust them, depression or
right,
general unhappiness. This is an unhealthy work environment,
right. These
without
are
a
all
doubt.
symptoms for sure that you'll see when your work environment is not the best, when you don't have that culture where people feel like they can talk to each other and really share things, be open and honest with each other. These are all things that you see when the culture is not healthy. So you want to focus in on what is the root cause and why are we having these symptoms, and then do something about it. Do something to change the culture in your organization.
Yeah, and we did a culture benchmark. We got data from over 300 companies, and there certainly is a group of companies in this first quartile which are the worst. And I think they're very, very toxic environments. I remember some of the comments were things like pure misery that came back when we asked people to describe the environment. Many companies are beyond this, but that doesn't mean there aren't pockets of this going on in a larger company. There aren't, groups of people where they're feeling this kind of emotional and cognitive stress and tension. So doesn't have to be at this issue either, right? We can have a level above this where it's somewhat toxic. So this is a real toxic environment, but you can imagine what's happening in environments that aren't really tuned properly for work, where the human infrastructure isn't working at its best.
Right. And what's crazy is nobody really focuses on this in the workplace. Um,
No, I mean, all these years later,
yeah, but
my
that no
God,
one really thought
you
about.
know, I wrote this book. My God, I wrote this. I started working on this in 2004. Got published came out January 2013. Still, all the lessons in here, people still are not doing this. It just blows my mind.
Yeah, yeah,
They talk about it. They want to talk about technology and what we're doing. What are we building? Ooh, look, the technology is no value. It's the people produce all the value. That's it.
yeah. You've got to really fine tune the people that you work with through that culture building. And once you transform that culture, you can transform the entire organization. The bottom line of the company gets better because the health of the people gets better. And as a
Yeah.
result, you do a better job. You're more focused, so you're able to think clearly and do a much better job than you would if you were in a toxic environment. If you think about those times when you've been in those
Mhm.
toxic spaces, because we've all been there, we've been in spaces
Horrible.
We've had leadership that was just toxic, or people in the environment that were toxic. You didn't want to spend one more moment than you had to in that environment. You
No,
were
not at all.
hours down and dreading going in every day. So we all have experienced it, but there's a lot that can be done to help change it. And I think that's where we are focusing now, through these shows. Every episode, we're just trying to show you another way of, hey, you can improve your culture, you can
Yep.
change things, you can evolve the culture in your organization. Things don't have to stay the same.
I think that's the message. You can change things. You can make a difference in your area. As you move up, you can impact more and more people. And as you make a difference in your area and it runs better, you're going to move up. And you're going
Yes,
to move up there or somewhere else because you're going to be running a great shop. You're going to get a reputation. You'll be able to talk about what you're doing that matters. You'll be able to build a brand. These are the human factors of leadership. Hop on board, join the Terry and Frank show. Feel free to subscribe. You know, we're on every Wednesday at 4 o'clock live. So we hope you join us and come learn more of these human factors because they're the difference between success and failure in a digital era where people are the most important tool in every company. Right, Tara?
yes, absolutely. Very well said.
Well, thank you. So listen, we'll see you next time. Thanks for stopping by. Hit that bell and subscribe.
Yes.